So hello and welcome back to the KD Weight Loss Podcast. Thank you very much for coming back. If you listened to last week, I really enjoyed being back on the microphone last week. We had a question from one of my clients last week, and it set the tone perfectly because it turned out to be a more, I say problematic, but a more common problem that most women have, and the ability to actually share that because again, like I've said before, like I want to help more people. I know not everyone's in the position for coaching. That's absolutely fine. I want to be able to share what I can share to help you at least take a step forward in what you're doing. And I think today, because this is actually from a client checking over the weekend, I'm going to call her Mrs. C, but this is from her checking over the weekend. And I shared it to my Instagram story the other day. And I highlighted a few of just the words that she used. And the amount of women that kind of clicked that and they were like, oh my God, that is me. Like, there was like at least 5-6 replies to that story, which for me is actually quite high. 5-6 replies to that story saying, this is me. Obviously, it's not, but it's me. So, this podcast episode, I really hope will land with a lot of you. One thing I will ask, if you are listening to this podcast right now, one, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. But two, can you do me two things? One, can you leave a wee 5-star review? It really, really does help. Increase the reach of the podcast, and when someone finds it and it's recommended, it really helps set the standard and people see it's actually worthwhile to listen to. Little comments on that would be fantastic, and if you can, share it with a friend. Like, you don't have to share it over Instagram or your Facebook, but just be like, if you listen to this, like, I know a amount of women that will talk to me and they're like, oh, I'm doing this diet and I'm doing that, and they'll share between things like that. Just drop it in there. Like, that's all I ask. The word of mouth goes a long way. It's the same with my business. The word of mouth is the biggest thing I can ever ask. So especially on something free like this, the best thing I can ask is just for a wee bit of just like a nudge in the right direction. But with that said, I'm going to get started on this one today. This is going to be kind of like how perfectionism works in weight loss. Sorry, let me say it again because I'm not very clever. How perfectionism weight loss shows up disguised as discipline or having high standards. Fun fact, it's not. So the whole idea today is my client, Mrs. C. So she felt like she had failed for not tracking this weekend. Not this weekend, last week. She had a few days off, and I'll go into it in even more detail. But how I coach that, I feel, because I'm biased, but also I believe it's right, is the right way of doing it. Because I truly believe most women here have not failed before because they didn't know how to lose weight. They knew, you know how to lose weight. You know you need to exercise. You know you need to go for steps. You know you need to eat X amount of calories and stuff like that and certain protein foods, blah, 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 blah. But I don't know another coach that will sit there and when you have a bad week, they will make sure that is going to be the best learning, the best part of your journey. Because any woman I've worked with who's had a bad week, it always becomes the best week because we get the most out of them. We figure out the real struggles, the little bits in the brain that are keeping you stuck. That isn't fixed by a calorie deficit and some exercise. It's fixed by work, unfortunately. Sounds shit, but it is. And it does take real work. And it's a lot to do with psychology, behavior change. So this could be some of it. So my client, Mrs. C, had a tough week and she tracked less than usual. And I'm going to read you actually some of the quotes from her check-in here right now. So I always ask, and this is actually a good insight to my check-in process. So every week there is one check-in, right? And then I'll do other things like phone call check-ins as well, every 2 weeks with clients as well. But this is one of the ones I do every week. And the idea is to get a picture of how they get them to reflect on how they felt the week went. Not just a submit your results, move on. It's a how did you feel this went? Because the biggest part of coaching for me is that you need to do the work. You need to realize this comes from you. I'm more of it's like a learner driver and a driver instructor. I'm there to guide you. I'm there to hold the brakes in emergencies. I'm there to do the emergency steers and turns and drive, to make sure you're back on track. But you've got to do the work whilst you're nervous, whilst you're a bit scared, you're a bit anxious, that sort of feeling. First question is rate your week, 1 to 10, and why this score. The why is the important part. So she said 5. That's the lowest score she has done in 8 weeks. And to quote, she says, not great calorie counting this week. I've had a few days not feeling great and other days I completely forgot. Eating was fine, but felt guilty as I hadn't checked in. That's the first bit. There's a feeling of guilt. That's going to be a topic today. Then, this is the bit that hit me home even more. I asked what went well this week because I want you to see, even the bad weeks, where things still went well. And this is really telling of not just Mrs. C, but a lot of other women as well that I see come into my program. Her response, to quote, not very much to be honest, but at least my weight was okay. Positive, she acknowledged her weight stayed the same. That is positive. I'll explain that a bit further. That's actually a really positive part. But not very much to be honest. She's not able to give herself credit for the small actions she still did that week, which she did do. Just because she wasn't tracking doesn't mean she didn't do anything. But in her eyes, because she hadn't tracked, she hadn't done anything worthwhile. And then this is the next important question, okay? What needs to change for you to move forward? The phrasing of this is the key point. I know it's just a bit of wordplay here, but it's very, very important, and how we speak to ourselves is massive. To quote, get my act together and calorie count and be more organized. Calorie count, fair enough. Most women would say that. It's useful because it's like, right, we address the behavior to actually keep our weight on track. Calorie count, fine. Doesn't necessarily address how she's going to calorie count if she has a stressful week. That's where my job as a coach comes in. How are we going to go about this? Be more organized. Again, how are we going to be more organized? Do we have specific days that are less busy? Do we have time slots in the morning where we can have 10 minutes of our morning coffee where we can look forward to the week? That's where the coaching comes in. But the word "get my act together" is a phrase filled with, shame. It's quite judgmental. It's like, my shit wasn't working this week. I need to get my act together. And I know it maybe isn't as aggressive from her because I know what she's like. But I know a lot of women be like, when they fuck up, I just need to fuck get on with it. I just need to stop. I need to find my motivation. And it's just the very self-deprecating, judgmental speaking. Does that make sense? And it's so common. And I reckon even in the first 5 minutes here, you've probably said something similar yourself. So to highlight what she's thought, so she believes that because she doesn't track this week, because she had a more stressful week, it's failing. She's failed. Not being on it, she's fallen off that wagon. Very, very common. And then obviously, as I said, getting your act together is that self-judgment. So if you feel you've needed to sort yourself out, what you probably don't realize is that's the trap itself. The way you've just said that to yourself is part of the problem why you're still stuck. But no one's ever told you that, and no one's ever helped you out of that. People just say, get on with it. So if we address the elephant in the room, and it's like, so she's already feeling like she's not done well. So my first job, and again, I disagree with a lot of coaching here potentially. A lot of people talk about how people need tough love. I agree sometimes when you're being a shithouse, you need to be called out for being a shithouse. I agree with that statement. But the majority of women I work with are not deliberately acting the shithouse. They're not deliberately saying, oh, but I'm doing that, and they're not doing it. They're not doing it for that reason. That's not how this works. She genuinely believes that because she didn't track, because she's so conditioned to only tracking, and we are tracking for our own reasons, I'll explain that in a minute, but she's conditioned to tracking only, that when she doesn't, she's failing. So I asked a couple of questions in our check-in. So I send a check-in video, usually under 5 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer if you've got a bit more going on that week. And in that video, I was like, look, I'm going to tell you now what I see as what you've done well, because she doesn't appreciate what she's done well yet. So I will challenge her and I will push that for her. I'll be like, I believe this is actually what you've done well. So I said to her, I was like, look, when you didn't track on those days, right, you didn't just eat willy-nilly, did you? And she's like, no. I was like, okay, so what did you do? She's like, well, some days I just didn't have a full meal. I didn't get to sit down and eat properly. I was like, okay, so you felt a bit out of control. You didn't really get to eat much. I said, so you weren't overeating? She's like, no. I was like, okay, so yes, undereating is not great either, but she didn't overindulge or crave or smack loads of foods into her mouth without control. So perfect, okay? She didn't go wild. A couple of other days where she had some other foods that weren't her typical foods. Again, she wasn't having silly portions. I asked her, like, again, what were you having? It wasn't silly portions. It wasn't anything crazy. Yes, there were some high calorie options in there here and there, but again, it wasn't like she was having like 2 double cheeseburgers, two hash browns and all that. Like, it wasn't like silly off, like, because she's gone off the rails that she can just eat anything. It was just she didn't actually get the chance to track it because she was busier. And just for context, this woman is a manager in a retail store. So if you've ever been in retail, you know it's stressful. And then if you're a manager, you know it's even more like that. She has common shifts where she works early to like mid-afternoon to early evening. So again, she's got all that going against her. And then I said this, because this woman I know walks steps for fun, right, because of her job. So I said to her, I was like, so just because you didn't tick the steps off on the app, you still do the steps, right? She's like, yeah. And I was like, right. Is it safe to assume you probably hit similar numbers as normal? She's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So you hit your normal steps just because you didn't record them doesn't mean you're not accountable. You were still thinking about being active. She's like, I still got out for my walks. Perfect. So, sure, she didn't track. Sure, she didn't say she'd done her steps, but she was doing little behaviours that could have helped her. We then obviously went on to discuss a plan, basically a bit more about like what she can do more in the future. It's like, look, if you ever feel like you haven't eaten, that's absolutely fine. Look towards the first meal you can get under control. And typically for her, that's her dinner. I was like, so if you feel like breakfast and lunch are just a bit chaotic, that's fine, right? When you get home for dinner, have something normal. Have something of one of your common meals. We like make 4 to 5 meals that she likes to cycle around because it's easier for her stress levels. There's less decisions to make, and she kind of deals better with that. That's what we've agreed on, and that's something that's really simple to gain control, because a lot of us just don't like feeling out of control, and when we feel out of control, we feel overwhelmed and anxious. It's a very, very common feeling, and it's often why we then give up, because then we're like, fuck it, I've got no control, what's the point at all? It's more about going from 0 to 100 and finding maybe a 60 or a 70%. It's trying to find that middle gap and make your worst days slightly better. That's where we want to be with this. But after check-in, because I mentioned these, I mentioned these questions I wanted to ask her during a check-in. So I sent them to her in text, and I said to her, I want you to text me, voice note me, or just have a little think about this, write it down on a piece of paper, whatever you want. Okay. And basically, this is part of my failure reframe system. My failure reframe system kind of uses CBT principles. If you've ever done that, you'll kind of understand what I mean. But basically, the idea, a lot of this is acknowledging what the facts are, what actually happened, acknowledging how you felt, what you were thinking, how your body felt, what sort of things are going on for your brain, for your body, and that sort of deal. Then basically turning it around to actually be like, right, what actions happened in that moment as a result of all this? Then once we've established the facts and stuff, it's then about basically looking at the what you actually would have wanted to do. What would the ideal action be? What support would you have liked to have? What would you really need in that moment? So I'm going to talk you through the questions, and I want you to ask yourself these, right? Because these will be very, very useful for yourself. So this is something you can take away from it, okay? So this is the first question, all right? A part of my failure reframe system. And again, these questions aren't exact. They can be changed based on the person. Like, it's a system I have that kind of works this way. So if your daughter had been ill, stressed, or mentally drained and didn't track for a few days, what would you say to her? So what I'm trying to do here, okay, is basically most of us, especially women, I think women are more like this, especially if you've got kids, okay? That's why I use the daughter here, because I know she's got a daughter. Most mums will feel this to the core. They can put every other person in this world in front of them for fun. You don't even need to think about it. Your daughter and your son need something, absolutely sorted. Your husband needs something, absolutely sorted. Work needs something, sorted. Women have been, and this is from Mrs. Media, this is the way we've been conditioned. And again, this is stuff women tell me, but you can see it. They've been conditioned to, when they get approval and praise based on performing for others and doing things for other people and serving others, motherhood kind of almost breeds that sort of mentality. So when you ask a woman to put, even with exercise, for example, half hour or an hour into their life to look after themselves, they're like, oh, but I don't know if I can. Because they're so not used to looking after themselves. But from someone who suffered with severe mental health issues, myself, I can tell you now, and as a dad as well, I can tell you now, if you burn that candle at both ends, there will be no candle for anyone else in your life. If you do not water your own grass, you can't water anyone else's grass. If you don't tend to yourself, you will have nothing of yourself to give to anyone. And I'm going to say it now, you do not owe anyone anything. Your kids, sure, safety, security, love, that's what they deserve. But no one deserves your time, attention, anything. You decide who you give that to. And when you start prioritizing yourself does not mean being selfish. It does not mean ignoring your responsibilities. That's not what it means. It's not a free pass. It's saying, though, I need this time each day or each week to recharge, to feel like myself, to make myself feel like a human that is not just a mum, not just a wife, anything like that. You are your own individual being. Before you had kids, before you had a partner, you were your own being. You are now. And back to my question, sorry, because I kind of went on a tangent there. A little bit passionate, clearly. So the idea is, if you do not look after yourself, you will not be able to look after others. What we're trying to get you to do here is think about compassion. Again, if your daughter had been ill, stressed, or mentally drained and didn't track for a few days, what would you say to her? I can guarantee none of you would shame her or make her feel guilty for it. Because what is there to feel guilty for? You literally identified the facts. You're ill. Why would I expect you to perform normally when you're ill? When you're stressed? Well, the world has normalized stress as being healthy. No, stress in small dosages is absolutely fine. Prolonged elevated stress is not fine because it causes lots of problems. Increased cortisol levels, increased inflammation, links to PCOS, those sorts of things. Yet stress is one of those things that people don't deal with. And then they're wondering why their body's going against them. So there we go. And then mentally drained. Again, mental wellness and mental well-being and health in general has come to the forefront. If your child was not feeling well mentally, would you expect them to perform or do everything they normally do? Absolutely not, would you? That would never happen. So what we're trying to get you here to show compassion to yourself. But by flipping that question to someone else, you can see how you speak to someone else. So now you direct that compassion back towards you. So again, if you want to, like I said, do this for yourself. Answer these questions for you. So question number 2, you said, and I quote, not much went well, end quote, but you maintained your average lowest weight. So I picked out something there for her. That doesn't happen by accident. So what did you do well? It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek from me here. I will be direct. You said not much went well, and I challenge all my clients here. I'm going to challenge you here, and I'll tell them, because I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just telling them, like, look, I'm going to call bullshit out what I call bullshit. She maintained her lowest average weight, okay? She's down, I think, off the top of my head, I think she's down 13 to 14 pounds roughly, right, in the last 8 weeks, give or take. She has not gained. She hit a new low weight, and she maintained that average low weight. She hit a new low weight, and then she managed to maintain her lowest average weight since we've started. That means, although weight doesn't directly transfer and correlate to immediate actions, long-term actions over a week, which that was a period of what she was struggling with, she still managed to maintain lower average weight. So she was still doing things in the right direction. Of course, there are little things she can do better. Of course there is. But it's making you acknowledge that even when things were failing or not going the way you thought they were, you still did actions that meant you were going towards your goals. Again, breaking that perfectionist or all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking is very, well, I can't do it if it's not perfect, okay? And it's not worth doing if I can't do it perfectly. Even when it wasn't going great in her head, she still did little things. She still checked in with me. She still filled her check-in in. She still filled in 3 out of the 7 days on her lifestyle section. She still was going to work. She still had some meals within control. She still was mindful about some of the things she was eating. But it's making you say it, not me. Again, I am very much an advocate of online coaching. The work is done by you. I am guiding you, okay? And I think this is why online coaching works so much better than in-person coaching. In-person coaching is great. I still do it. I don't do it at masses because I feel like it only serves the purpose for people who are brand new to the gym, who have severe or had a lot of need for change in exercise because of health issues, because of injuries and stuff like that. Sports performance sometimes as well. But in terms of general weight loss, having online training and online coaching, I feel shifts the power onto you to take responsibility and accountability better, which empowers you to make better choices and lifestyle decisions, which will serve you better for life, and you become less dependent on your coach, which is what I empower and I believe is the best way of doing this. So you have to see what you've done well. But in the early stages, that's where coaching comes in. You don't know how to look for the successes in the failures. There are still successes even when we fail. I showed us that all the time. Even when we weren't right, we were closer to being right. So on the days you didn't count, so the third question, on the days you didn't calorie count, which habits or what habits still helped you stay on track? For example, I know this woman here, Mrs. C, she has a later breakfast lunch. So she has like a brunch instead. She doesn't have breakfast before she goes to work. I know she picks from a certain few bits in the local Sainsbury's. We've had a conversation before about what bits are better than others, okay? So maybe she thought about that. Maybe she was mindful in what she put rather than just grabbing whatever the fuck she wanted because she was feeling shit that day. Again, she maybe went for a daily walk. She maybe had her water bottle sitting with her. Any of these simple little habits, it's just like, again, it's reinforcing the idea that even though you're struggling, your brain is still working towards your goals. And last, number 4, like I said, I only include 4 here because I've got 10 of them here, right? And I don't want to overwhelm my clients, but again, 4 to start with, and I wrote 10 for this client, okay? And I picked the best handful ones that I felt were appropriate. So number 4, what would getting your act together look like in actual steps, 2 to 3 small steps? The thing here is what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically we're trying to take the judgment language of get my act together. Get my act together actually doesn't serve any beneficial purpose. It doesn't give you any action to do. It just judges you and be like, well, I didn't have my shit together. What's the point? I need to actually get my shit together, right? But how do you actually do that? That's like what you've been saying. I need to lose this stone. Right, cool. How are you actually going to do that? Like, I need to eat less. Okay. Again, how are you actually going to do that? You need a plan. And again, a calorie deficit is not a plan. It is part of the first steps of a plan. It's like, how do you achieve that calorie deficit? Right. Do you eat 2 meals? Do you eat 3 meals? What foods do you like? What foods don't you like? How can we add better foods into common meals that you eat? If you've got to cook for the kids, can we make meals that you both eat? See the intricacies of how we achieve this? And that's where coaching comes in. And again, I'll say it time and time again. You can get a workout off YouTube. You can get a nutrition and a meal plan off of the internet. It ain't going to fucking work for you because it doesn't consider even those 3 or 4 questions I just spouted off the moment there. It does not work that way. Because again, if it was that easy, we'd all be fucking sorted. Even myself, right now, like, I'm having to change my eating habits because I've stopped obviously walking around as much because I used to push trolleys every day. I get 20 plus K steps a day. I'm having to change my eating habits and I'm finding that hard because I have to do it myself. If I had a coach to be accountable for, which I have, I get paid for training them. But if I paid for nutrition, this person would help me be like, right, what time of the day can you eat? What sort of meals do you like to eat? Right, can you add this instead of that into your meals? Can you tweak that? That's what they're doing. Even coaches need coaching. I know what to do, but I need help achieving it. The how. Take those 4 questions. Have a little think about yourself whenever you felt a bit shameful, you've judged yourself, and you just felt a bit shit in yourself, and you're just like, oh, I just don't know what to do. The point is, we're trying to shift everything, the self-talk, from judgment to self-compassion. Compassion isn't a free pass. Compassion is understanding, though. If you understand why you did something and why you felt the way you did, it's going to go a lot further. And stuff like this can go so far back. Again, this client, it wasn't for, but for other clients, for example, I know for a fact that they were bullied for their weight when they were younger. Maybe their parents only approved of them when they looked a certain way. It can be as deep as that. It can go further than that. But that's just a way to show you how your eating habits right now, that you're trying to lose weight, isn't just you want to lose weight. It can go way further than that. So I don't want to spend too much more time. Knowing me, I'll still spend 10 minutes. But there's a book I read a while back called The Mountain Is You. I think her name's Brianna Wiest, or Wiest. Very good book. I've read a lot of self-help books because, you know, my brain is a mush pit of greatness. This book was fantastic for defining and talking about perfectionism. It gave me massive insights that I understand perfectionism from my own problems. But perfectionism and how it's... Because we hear this phrase self-sabotage and people think, like, why would I sabotage myself? It's not like you're going out your way to actually hurt yourself, like properly, like and cause yourself harm. But you're trying to protect yourself because you're fearful, you're scared. So this mindset of being perfect is not just unique to my client, Mr. C. Perfectionism is not about having high standards. It's what a lot of people be like, I'm a perfectionist. They identify with it. And when they identify with it, they try and use it as a positive reinforcement tool. I'm sorry to shit on anyone's parade here, but it's not. I used to be that person. I've worked with women who are still that person and have been that person before. Perfectionism does not serve you. You can want to do well, but accept failure. Perfectionism does not allow you to do that. Perfectionism is a fear-based behavior. It's a defense mechanism that says if you can't do everything perfectly, you'll avoid it because you won't suffer pain, judgment, or failure. Nothing, you'll have no repercussions. Because the real problem here is perfectionism doesn't just move you forward. It keeps you frozen in the illusion of starting again over and over. And eventually you get so burnt out of trying to be perfect that you just fucking give up altogether. So you're scared to start because you need to be perfect. And then you start and it doesn't go perfect after day 3. And then you're like, what's the point of carrying on? So you stop. And then 6 months later, New Year comes around again. You're like, oh, I'll start again this year. And then you start a new program. It goes well for a month maybe this time. And then you hit that brick wall of motivation, which I said, by the way, I think in last week's episode, that after 3 to 5 weeks, motivation goes in the bin 9 times out of 10 for most people. It's a cycle. But because you didn't know that, you feel shit, you give up again. And then do you know what? You get to a point being like, maybe I'm just meant to be this way. And then you start finding these other statements that, oh, you know, it's all downhill after 30, 40 or 50. Increasing your weight or getting fatter is a part of being older. It's just meant to be this way. You start having statements that reinforce that mindset to protect yourself for ever failing again. Just see how this is spiraling now. So the person who tried and failed now feels worse. They try again, they fail, they now feel worse. You're now believing that it's just part of accept of life. The amount of women and men and amount of women I've worked with that I've got bad knees, I can't do that. You just need a program that tells you shows you how to actually strengthen your knees and do things that prepare you for what you need to be able to do in life. Same with your eating. It's not you that's directly to blame here. Like there's some accountability, of course there is. Absolutely. You've got to do the mindset stuff. But if you're joining 6-week shreds, 10-week this, that just want to, and again, I fucking despise this, coaches that are just there to get a fucking photo to slap on their Instagram. I know I use it photos for before and afters, right? If I'm perfectly honest, if I can make my business without before and after photos, I'd fucking do it. But unfortunately, the way social media works is you have to prove to people you can do shit, right? That's not my bread and butter. Anyone in the world who has done a PT certification can get you to lose fat and things like that. I can do it in a healthy way. I can do it in a way where you feel better and have more energy. I can do it in a way that you don't fuck up your hormones, stop your period, or you actually feel better during and your menopausal transition. There's a huge difference of how you actually perform this. I've gone on this rant and I've lost my fucking trail of thought. Yes, so the system is designed to set you up. Like, again, if you're just constantly fed programs that are just designed to make you lose weight quickly and make you lose weight so you look shredded or better for holidays, great, fine. If that's what you want to get, that's fine. I can do that, and I will do that as part of my 6-week challenge, right? But I do the one bit that I don't see any other coach talking about. They don't do it in their programs. They don't talk about the bit you need to do, which is to learn how to keep it off and live a normal life. Because you aren't trained. You know how to lose weight, but you're not trained how to keep it off and keep it off for good. You most probably don't even know that maintenance isn't a static number. People are like, oh, my weight must stay the same. No, maintenance is a fluctuation of a couple of kilos. So I don't know where I am now, but when I was sitting at maintenance a while back, I would fluctuate between 82 to 85 kilos over the course of a month. Some weeks I'd eat more, some weeks I'd eat less, but it was within a range. It wasn't extreme, and I wasn't going trending in a direction. It was just this little wobble. So if you listen to this, I've done a little wibbly wobbly hand. It looks like waves. That's what it is. So yes, I use photos and stuff like that to show you that you have actually changed, because women will get to a point being like, have I actually lost any weight? And then the photo is actually what shows them that. I'll use photos, I'll use measures, I'll use the scales. That's just a tool to prove you are making change. That's what my 6-week challenge is about, to prove you can actually get changes. But I am here to help show you that long run of changing how you see yourself and escaping that endless cycle of perfectionism. At the end of the day, self-sabotage is when we say we want something and we then go about making sure it doesn't happen. We're not trying to harm ourselves, but we're trying to protect ourselves. So look, going back to Mrs. C, she was making progress, but she just couldn't see it because she wasn't perfect. Of course, there's going to be a better week, but this is what we needed to do. All we needed to do was we needed to make sure that her perfectionism wasn't blinding her, because the fact of the matter is she still kept structure. She still made mindful food choices, and she still held her lowest average weight. She still had wins this week. And this is the biggest lesson, I suppose. It comes back to the whole thing. I don't want your best on your best days. Again, this client has been at her top of her game for 8 weeks now. And I was sitting there, I was like, I always say this to every client when they have their first bad day in their eyes. I'm like, and I've been waiting for this, and this is going to be the best week of your life. Even though they're like, what? How the fuck's going to be the best week of my life? This is just, it feels shit right now. I'm telling you now, it's going to be the best day of your life. Jeez, I live a sad life, if that's how I do. If I truly believe that. You know what I mean? Work-wise, I'm talking about. Like, my life's great, to be fair. I want you doing not your best on your worst days, but I want you to reduce the gap between your best days and your worst days, okay? It's not about nailing every day. It's about making your worst days more average, being more average. I love that word, average. It's great. Like, yes, fuck average and everything like that, but make your worst days just an average day. Make it not a shit day. Make it a less shit day. Focus on being less shit. I'm going to print that on a t-shirt. Does anyone want it? Let's all be less shit. I don't know. I need to make a statement on that. I can't think of one right now, but I'm going to come up with a statement. Focus on being, let's all just be less shit instead of all or nothing. Because then you're going to win and you're going to stay in it. And I think if you listen to my content enough, if you stay in it long enough, you will get the results. Most women quit before that result comes into play. All right. Most women quit before that result comes into play. It can be brutal sometimes. It can take so long to see that payoff. Again, I used the famous case of one of my other clients. Same weight for 9 to 10 days, increased weight, then dropped to an all-time new low weight after those 2 days. It can be brutal, but if you stay in it, you will see the results. So just next time you feel like you need to get your act together, just ask, what would you say to someone that you love in the exact same spot as you right now? I can guarantee it would be something far from what you're going to say to yourself right this second, or have been saying to yourself. So look, Mrs. C did not fail this week. Perfectionism just robbed her of the progress she had made, basically. My job was to shine that light on there. And in the background, whether she replies, whether she thinks about it, whatever, that's the work that needs to be done. And this is going to happen time and time and time again. This is why I don't give like an outlook as to how long this stuff can take. I used to say 6 months. It's more like 6 to 12 months. The clients I've had the longest, who are like 18 to 2 months into my program, they now just stay with me because they love having that like kind of reality check, right? But you just need to realize that, yes, it starts maybe with 6 weeks, like my 6-week challenge. It starts with something small to prove to you, to give you motivation to actually make more change. Because again, motivation comes from taking action and seeing results. That's what motivates you. if we can do that in the short term, get you the results, and then help challenge you when you're having a shit week. Because if the plan doesn't work when you're having the hard weeks or the bad weeks, it's never going to fucking work. It just works on the good weeks. Nah, it's not going to work. You need a plan that will work for you on your worst days. That's what I offer. That's what I do. Everyone's plan is going to be slightly different. The concept remains the same. So just remember, if you need to track perfectly, punch my microphone. If you need to track perfectly, if you need to eat perfectly or train perfectly, you don't need to do that. You need to stay in the game on your bad days, and that's how you build a mountain. One imperfect step at a time. Look at me trying to be fancy while talking there. So look, hopefully I didn't go on too many rants there, because I know I go on a lot of rants here and there and stuff like that. So I hope that really, really did help, because again, I want to answer questions. I want to do like a quick fire, like Q&A style podcast one day. I think that'd be really, really beneficial. So I'm going to finish this podcast asking for like a little call to action. So if you have any questions for the future podcast, short ones about anything nutritionally related, like again, like what food do I need to eat for this? What do I need to do for this? How much of this should I be drinking? I had someone talking to me the other day, asking about how much caffeine she was taking in, and like, is it normal to have headaches afterwards? And like little questions like that. I want to do a quick fire. So send me a question in the comments on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to this to, and then what I'll do is I'll do a wee episode on that next time. But I've also got another story I want to share with you on one of the next episodes. But for now, I've waffled for half an hour. I've waffled half an hour. Hopefully you found some value in it, and if not, I'll speak to you very, very soon.